The mulligan is one of the hardest parts of Hearthstone, so if you're struggling with it, you are not alone. In this video, we'll be breaking down everything you need to know about the mulligan. I'll show you some examples across multiple archetypes and give you a few simple tips that help you improve your win rate. To help with all of this, we'll be using Aggro. You can see here. It is a very useful website that you can use for the mulligan and much more, and all for free. And yeah, the first deck we got here is Quest Warrior Control deck, but we'll also be having examples for mid-range decks and an aggro deck, and then yeah, help you with those and see how you want to mulligan with it. So first of all, we start, right, you look at the deck, you want to look at the mulligan win rates, and you clicked on the deck you were playing and you see these stats. So what you do? Well, first of all, you want to make sure that the deck has enough games, enough sample size. So this deck we have here is 13,000 games, so that's generally enough. You want to usually have at least a couple of thousand games, because, well, what happens when you don't have enough games is that you get stats like these. So here we have the mulligan impact, so basically the cards you want to keep, and we have here a deck that has a 98 game sample size. And what do we see here? Well, it turns out if you keep the Great Dracorex, it is an insane increase in win rate, but yeah, if you think about it, right, keeping an 8 drop, probably not the thing you want to do in this deck. Same with the Ceaseless Expanse. I mean, the fact that it's the second highest mulligan win rate card tells you something, right? That is just not correct. So always think critically about these things and be like, yeah, 98 games, that is definitely not the win rate you want to be using. So what you instead want to do, right, if yeah, your exact deck isn't there, is look at all the decks for that archetype. So here we have the decks for the Quest Warrior, and then you kind of just want to look at like the games, right? Like here we see, so this is the deck I picked, right? 13,000 games. It is easily the most here, and yeah, if your deck is somewhat close to it, right, then that's generally the deck you want to be looking at. And then you get to these stats here, of course, that we showed at the start. Now, another thing you do is look at the archetype card stats. Then you can then you get this list, but you see here a lot of cards are just not cards you want to play. Now you can fix this by increasing the mulligan count to take away all these cards that don't get played a lot, right? Like, let's go to 6,500, and then you pretty much get probably the deck you are playing if you're playing this deck. And then it can be pretty accurate, but it can just be easier to just look at like a high played list like this one here. And what you want to do then is click on the mulligan impact, and then we basically get cards sorted by how good they are in the mulligan. And then we look at the cards, right? We see, yeah, New Heights at the top, then we have Elise, and then we have Enter the Lost City, the quest, and the All You Can Eat. And then you have to think, do these cards make sense to keep? You do have to always think about that, and yeah, but I think it makes sense to keep New Heights and Elise. That's generally what I mulligan for as well. So these make sense. Now also what this tells you is how you want to proceed with the game with this deck. It basically tells you your game plan for the early game, and that's just, yeah, you just want to find ramp and then play Elise to control the board, and the rest of the deck is not too important which order you draw it necessarily for the mulligan. You just want to have the ramp early. That's way more impactful than anything else. And then also you see cards like Shield Block here and Precursory Strike. They do have a negative win rate, even though they're often kept, because, right, 2 mana cards, you want to play it on 2, but that's just because, yeah, if you get 2 of those, then you can only play 1 on turn 2, but you just maybe want to have 1. And also, if you're going first, it's very different, right? We can select here. If you're going first, then the stats change a bit, and we can see Elise is the best card. And yeah, we know Elise is amazing going first, because you can play it on 4 into 5 the location, and that is incredible. And we see here also a Shield Slam, but yeah, again, you gotta think kind of critically. Do you really want Shield Slam in the early game? I feel like you don't. Like, yeah, it's a positive win rate, but I don't think I would be keeping it. That's just also, you gotta remember, right, going first or second, it halves the sample size, so it gets a bit more inaccurate. And sometimes cards are just better or worse, even though it doesn't really make sense to me. So yeah, well, Shield Slam is pretty good here. I definitely wouldn't keep it. And also what we saw earlier, the card All You Can Eat was a positive win rate, barely, in the mulligan. But yeah, if you go second, All You Can Eat is way lower. And why is that? Well, if you go second, right, you have 2 extra cards. So playing that on 3 and then drawing 3 cards, you might just be struggling with overdrawing. And yeah, you don't have that when you're going first, like you can see here when going first. All You Can Eat is third with a nice increase in win rate, right? Because yeah, you have 2 less cards, so less struggle with overdrawing, so draw is actually more valuable. So it's a way better keep going first than going second. So always consider if you're going first or second and what cards are better when going first or second. Again, you know, the most important cards, it doesn't matter if you're going first or second, you always keep it. But for other cards that are on the edge of being slightly better or slightly worse than the average mulligan, you might want to be thinking about those. Now let's go to a mid-range deck, and here we have the Shaman, of course the best deck at the moment if you want to be climbing. And as you can see here, the sample size, it's pretty big, 143,000 games. Yeah, that is plenty to make these stats pretty accurate. Again, it's pretty accurate, it's never 100%, but you can kind of trust these stats. And what do we see here in the mulligan? Well, unsurprisingly, the best card is Hagatha. Well, you know why. The second best card is Growfin, because yeah, that's just the best turn 1 play you have. Then you have Turbulus, you know, the earlier the better with that card. Parrot Sanctuary, so you can cheat out that Hagatha early, right? These all cards all make sense. And then barely positive is the Pop-Up Book and Static Shock. So those are cards you don't necessarily always want to be keeping, right? Those are really cards you want to be thinking about when do you want to keep them. Because again, a card like Pop-Up Book, right? Yeah, it can be great if you're going second against like the Aggro Demon Hunter, because they have a lot of 1-2s that you want to clear. But if you're going against a slower deck, let's say, you know, you can select, let's say Druid. You can see here that suddenly, yeah, it's not that good, right? Because Druid, yeah, they don't really play early minions that you need to clear. So then Pop-Up Book just isn't really worth it. So always consider also the class you're playing against and how important that is. Although again, you can see here the avatar form is on top. Yeah, I don't think that's the best mulligan win rate card. But you can see also the sample size of games has gone down a lot. So again, then you have to think about, does the card make sense to keep? And I would say no, I don't think it makes sense to keep, so I wouldn't keep it. And kind of the same here with the second card, Furious Files. It's at 2.2, so it's the second card. Like, yeah, they don't really make a whole lot of sense to keep, right? You don't keep it in most matchups. Of course, then after that, Turbulus, Hagatha, you know, Living Flame, Parrot Sanctuary, Primordial Overseer even, you know, they make a lot more sense to keep. So again, always think logically and don't just take these stats, see the highest win rate and keep it without ever thinking why you want to keep that. Now let's go back here to the stats. And again, what we're seeing, right, is also Elise suddenly. Before we saw it was a top 2 card, but here we see it's actually not that great to keep. And well, why is that? Because isn't Elise one of the best cards? And well, yeah, it is, but you want to look at what deck you're playing here. So we're playing Shaman, and what does Shaman want to do on turn 4? Well, Elise is good, but we also have Hagatha, so you rather play Hagatha than Elise, so that competes with Elise, and then yeah, it's just better to play Hagatha. Also, what often happens, especially if you're going first, is you play Flight of the Firehawk on 3. Not the card you want to be keeping, but if you get it, it's nice if you can play that over some other cards. And then yeah, what do you get on turn 4 is Bumbling Bellhop as 2 5/5s. And yeah, you rather play the Bumbling Bellhop then as 2 5/5s, maybe with the growth in with it, or with the location, and that is way better than Elise. So the thing here is that Elise is competing with a lot of other cards in the turn 4 slot basically, and that means that the mulligan just isn't that great on it. Now you can again look at going first and going second, because going first it's actually a bit better, because again you can curve 4 to 5. Well, if you're going second, you fall behind with Elise, it is worse. So again, yeah, a card like Elise is way better going first. You probably already noticed that. And yeah, that's how you can use these stats here. We can also look at the Static Shock, what you want to do, because it's barely positive in the win rate. For example, let's say you're playing a mirror, right? You're playing against another Shaman. Well, you can see with Static Shock, it suddenly gets a lot better than Mulligan. And then why is that? Well, of course, one of the best Mulligan cards for the Shaman is that Murloc Rovin, and then Static Shock deals with it for 0 mana. You can actually especially see that if you're going second, it is actually the best card in the Mulligan here. And yeah, that makes sense, right? Because you're going second, you need to be more reactive. And then, yeah, the best way to deal with those 1-drops they got is the Static Shock. And because you're going second, you have an extra card, so losing a card with low value isn't as bad as when you're going first. So always keep in mind what you want to be doing, right? Second, you're maybe a bit more reactive. And if you are going first, then you want more proactive cards. So, you know, Hagatha on curve is way more important. Same with Elise. And the same here with the Bubbling Bellhop, right? You might think keeping it, oh, it's a turn 3 6/6 stats, but you're not playing it for that. Decks can deal with turn 3 6/6 stats, but what is the great thing again is those buffs you can get, right? Turbulus, you need that first, make it a 4/4, or Fly of the Firehawk, make it a 5/5 or 6/6 even with both of them. And then even late game, it might be good if you get to buff it with the 7 mana buff spell that is here, Wish Upon a Star. So yeah, that's why you don't want to keep cards like that necessarily. You can keep Growth in because again, it's turn 1 and you get another card that also is good to be buffed. but always think about why you are keeping those cards and how do these cards fit in the game plan. Then let's quickly go over another popular mid-range deck, the Dragon Warrior, which is of course very strong at the moment. And looking at the win rate here, well, first of all, sample size 55,000 games. Yeah, that is plenty. And what do we see here? The best Mulligan cards are Gift Wrap Whelp, Dark Rider, Stone Carver, Pedal Peddler, and Sanguine Depths. And then Brute Keeper is maybe keep, same with these two. And then, yeah, well, does that make sense? Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, that's what you want to do with the deck, right? Curve out with your strong early game, get those 1-drops into the 2-drops, and then especially cards like Pedal Peddler and especially that Stone Carver can snowball. So yeah, this mulligan makes sense. And you can kind of see your game plan here for the early game is get that snowball going. And what you don't want to be doing is playing 2 mana cards that don't develop the board. So we can see Precursory Strike, doesn't develop Shadow Flame Suffusion, doesn't develop Quality Assurance, doesn't develop either. You might think it's nice to have all these cards on 2, but they're definitely not cards you want to be keeping because it is a tempo deck and these cards just are not tempo cards. So it really tells you what kind of deck it is, what the game plan is. So these stats can be very useful in improving your game plan and just winning more in general. Then let's go to the last deck we have here as an aggro deck. It's the Aggro Demon Hunter, which is very strong at the moment and has been for a while. And what do we see here for the mulligan is that somehow 1-drops are actually not the best cards in opener. Yeah, I was surprised about this too, but that does tell you a little bit about what you want to do in the opening. And what we do see as the best cards are Grim Harvest, Dangerous Cliffside, and the Ziliax Deluxe, and this is the one that I think doubles the attack on turn 4, and yeah, that's really strong if you can coin it or just play it on turn 4, because if they don't kill it, the opponent, it is 10 attack, and yeah, that's pretty good for an aggro deck. And if you think like, this doesn't make sense, it doesn't keep the 1-drops, we can go to the archetype stats, so let's go here. And same with the archetype stats, the 1-drops are just slightly worse in the mulligan than other cards, so you kind of have to start thinking, is this correct? Does this make sense? Or is there a bigger reason behind it that these cards are here? And I feel like that's what my guess here is that these cards are great on turn 1, but then if you get to turn 2, you often don't have 2 1-drops, so then you rather have a 2-drop like that Grim Harvest on 2 of the Spirit of the Team. Then on turn 3 with the coin, you have rather have the Ziliax or the Dangerous Cliffside, and on turn 4 again you rather have other cards like the Serpent here, the Perennial Serpent, and that just means you might not have time to play those other 1-drops you have. So I think that's why the reason it's here is that they're low is because you just want 1-drop, and because you have 6 1-drops, there's a pretty good chance you get one of them. But if you get too many of them, it's really bad because then you run out of cards and you don't have the big cards you do actual one. So that is my guess here, and that's how you maybe can, you know, try and learn from these stats a bit about what that game plan is. And also a big thing you can see is the difference between coin and not coin. So we see the Perennial Serpent at 0.0, so it's kind of a neutral keep. But if we go to the player on the coin, it suddenly gets a lot better. It's suddenly the best card in the mulligan. And well, why is that? Well, it's because you can coin it, right? And that's because then the Grim Harvest is way better, because unless you get the 1-drop, you have a dormant card on turn 3, and then you can play this on turn 3, and this card is incredibly strong on turn 3. If you're going first and then you play this, there's a 1 in 3 chance it can actually activate on turn 4, so it's a lot less likely, so it gets a lot worse when you're going first. But going second, this card is way stronger, so yeah, always keep in mind if you're going first or second and how that changes your plays in the early game. And if we're going to the stats for when you're going first with this deck, the 1-drops do get better, and that's of course because yeah, you're going first, so it makes sense that yeah, you get on board first, you want to have that 1-drop, so it is better than to have those and then just be aggressive with them. We can see already right now, right, there's a big advantage for going first, and then yeah, the 1-drops are a good example of that. Your opponent hasn't been able to do anything yet, and you already have a minion on board that can push multiple points of damage, so that's good. So you can see here again, check out the stats for going first and second, sometimes see if that changes. So here it does change it. And the very last tip I have, and it's actually pretty important, is that you always want to consider the other cards you already have in the mulligan. For example, with this Demon Hunt, if you're going second and you hit both Grim Harvest and Perennial Serpent in your mulligan, then keeping a 1-drop is already way better than with other mulligans, because you already have the combo that you want. So then it's great, you can go 1-drop into Grim Harvest, into Perennial Serpent. That is a great opener, so keep that in mind. The same can be said for the Quest Warrior. For example, if you start already with that New Heights, then you already got your most important card, then you can think about what you want to do after that. For example, if you played New Heights, then a card like Ancient of Yore might just be suddenly a lot better. Like if I'm going first, first I got New Heights and I see Ancient of Yore, I'll probably keep that Ancient of Yore because that's a great turn after that New Heights. While if I got Yore by itself without New Heights, I wouldn't keep it. So it is very important to think about how the cards in your mulligan synergize with the other cards in your mulligan, or how there maybe can be a nice 1, 2, 3 curve, even though one card might not be necessarily the best if you would keep it by itself. And that is pretty much all I got for the mulligan. So you want to look at these stats, but then think critically about them. Do they make sense? And is that actually what you want to be doing with the deck? Then check if you're going first or second, and if there's big differences between going first and second with a deck. And then you can look at the cards, the strong cards at the start, and then kind of decide based on that what is the best game plan with the deck. Also, you want to consider the whole picture of your hand, because if you keep one card, then maybe one other card gets way better, even though you wouldn't necessarily keep that card by itself. And always think about what your opponent's deck is, what do they want to do in the early game, and then kind of see what is your best mulligan against that as well, on top of what you would keep in general. If you have any other tips or questions, let us know in the comments. If this video was helpful, make sure to like and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. Thank you for watching, and until next time.